Look, it's at the bottom of the stairs. I just wanted to show you the fog. That's a little boat that Steve sails. Probably not little, I just think it's little. I think anything under 300 feet is little. I guess that was a cormorant taking off. And that's the island across the road from us. And it's sort of middle tide. That's the road. And that's the marsh. That's the entryway to the camp. This is where we park. And that's the bridge that I usually talk about. Well, it's really foggy. Well, it's probably going to get worse. We're expecting more fog in. Well, I was walking along and the mosquitoes are so bad today so that I ended up clicking off because I'm trying to kick one off of my face, which was dangerous. So that's what it looks like on our side when the tide is really low. It's beautiful when the tide's really high, but it's quite interesting now because this is often when the herons come in and the ducks out in that further area do their business. Ducks are hilarious. Okay, so it's starting to rain and the mosquitoes are too much. See you in a minute. That's where I just was. That's our little bridge back. Don't go too fast, makes people seasick. And that's the path back to where we stay. And I'm watching the camera. Hope I don't trip on my roots and stuff like that. Okay. That's where the hammock is. I may have shown you this path last summer. But, okay. You can see the fog. Yeah. There you go. We had to have a big pine tree brought down because it had lifted. And, so that will someday be, I don't know what it'll be. It's hard to know what to do with all that wood. It's pine. It'd be really nice if we could get it out to the road and milled, but I don't think I'm strong enough with Steve to move it out to the road. The barbecue. And the new bathhouse in the porch. I've seen this before. I've been putting down chip wood to create a better path. And back to the gazebo where one year we had the brilliant idea of putting up clear vinyl shower curtains so that we could still sit here, have a view. It's a bit, a bit compromised as a view, but you still get to see through. All right, going in. Probably 17 mosquitoes will follow me. Okay, we just finished dinner. And so it looks even foggier when the curtains are up, but you can see through the one clear spot that it's starting to creep in. Oh, I'll see you in a bit talking about books. Okay, computer's giving me a bit of trouble. Quickly, before it dies again, I recommend all of these, 5 out of 5 for all of them, and I hope your reading dreams and wishes continue to come true, and your adventures. And just to let you know, the reason I'm not in front of the camera is it's been so muggy and hot, the mosquitoes are insane, and they've really gone for the right side of my face while I was sleeping. So you don't want to see that mess. I'll talk to you soon with a much smaller face. Bye. And here are the books I was talking about. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that picture on the left. That's a picture that our daughter painted for Steve's birthday. And she took a snap of that the last time she was with us. And you may have known that our little cat, Cleobel, passed away. So this was she really captured the cat quite beautifully. And that is definitely her expression. So it was a really bittersweet birthday card. So anyways, that's the background photo, and thank you, Phoebe. The books that we are talking about today are all of authors, women authors of color, and from several different generations. Nella Larsen wrote this book back in the 30s and 40s, and Passing is a book that's been really hot in the last 12 months on BookTube. And I had it in my stack of things to read anyhow, because as I've talked about before, this little um, Macmillan Press book they're just such sweet books. So I picked up about 10, I think, and this was one of them. So Passing is about two ladies. One, Claire, is definitely passing as a white person, and her childhood friend Irene is not, although she is also very light skinned. And Claire has gone on to whatever it is she's going to do with her life, and has married an extremely bigoted white man, and seems reasonably comfortable with that, because her goal was to get away from the poverty and constraints of the world that she lived in a colored community. Irene, on the other hand, is also extremely concerned with comfort, but first of all, safety. And she interprets that quite differently than Claire. She takes no risks whatsoever. And as a result, her fiance wanted to go to Brazil. I don't remember exactly why, whether he wanted to practice his doctoring there or whether he just wanted to be in a different country than America. But she put the kibosh on that. So her marriage has been based on, right from the get-go, on this significantly repressed dream of her husband's, because Irene has got definite ideas and conditions about what is safe, and has a very typical black persons of the times middle class life. So up comes a letter from Claire. She wants to reconnect, and Irene is not interested in that. But of course, over time, they eventually get together. And from Irene's point of view, Claire is nothing but a potential bomb ready to go off, because what happens if her husband finds out? And Irene is light enough that she can also pass as white. So when her husband bumps into herself and Claire having tea in a hotel room, he doesn't get it. So lucky for Claire. And the book continues. The tension from Irene's point of view grows and grows, because she really just sees Claire as not only disrupting her own world, but potentially disrupting Irene's world. So don't want to give it away. The ending was really, really tense, unexpected. It's beautifully written. You really get into the head of Irene. She is so repressed and so afraid. And Claire, you really get a sense of her as well, because you think she's the bad person. And it's sort of, you have to sort of leave it till the very ending to decide just how bad she actually is. So it's a real page turner. Completely enjoyed it and recommend it for sure. Now, as I say, I think that was written in the sort of 1930s, pre-World War II. So this one is a complete contemporary. I wanted to show you the cover. And it's, now all of these kids except one is a child of some culture other than white. So we've got Costa Rican, which is essentially American, but not, because of the color issue, sort of not. It's one of the bizarrest situations that America has going. Two of the other kids are definitely children of color. One is from a country that his parents are immigrants from without papers. And let me see, did I miss anyone? No. Okay, and then someone else is just plain old American, but a person of color. So all these kids, for one reason or another, learning disabilities, they're, for the most part, come together in a classroom, and their teacher, Miss Laverne, has found a classroom that they can go to at about 2:45 every day, and they can just chat. She asks them to just talk to each other. She doesn't have there's no homework assigned to it. They're just to chat. And as time goes by, the kids get to know each other and get to know their stories and not their learning disabilities, but the social chaos that's going on in their homes. So the boy whose parents have come in without proper papers, he was born in America, but his parents weren't, so he's of that group of kids who are probably going to be deported with their parents, even though they're American citizens. So this Jacqueline Woodson, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, is just an absolute stellar writer. She's written several books. A Brown Girl
Brown Girl Dreaming is probably her most noted book, but she's got several others, and she's an extremely eloquent speaker and essay writer, and really addresses issues that are related to, I'm going to say, variations of culture, because she has such a wonderful range of characters, not only as individuals with personalities, but also with their background, social cultural changes amongst each other. So, beautiful book. There's lots of, it's very short. I think I read it in maybe 2.5 hours. And there's just so much information in it. The kids are coming at the reader with all kinds of anguish and frustration and, in some cases, anger. There's a white boy in there who is not especially privileged in the world of whiteness, but in the world of his classmates, he's just like, the king. So he's being awoken to the issues around him. His best friend Amir really, 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 loves him as best friends do, but it's like also, Ashton, you really don't get it. You really, really don't get it. So Ashton is, part of his journey is to be getting it. And one of the things that's kind of interesting from Ashton's point of view is that as one of the few white kids in the school, he experiences the bullying of the minority group. So he's been assaulted a couple of times by kids in grade 8. And, I think that's an interesting element in the book, because people who are the oppressor can experience what it's like to be in a minority situation. Not that I think you're still in a position of power in those scenarios, but you do get a sense of it. We lived in one community in Toronto that was like almost 100% Puerto Rican or Vietnamese, and the street signage and everything was in Portuguese and Vietnamese, but we could leave anytime we wanted. But our neighbors were not particularly friendly, and the school where the kids went was full of kids with English as a second language or a third language, sometimes in the case of the Vietnamese kids, even a fourth language. But we always knew we could extract ourselves from the scenario, whereas those children couldn't and often didn't. So, but it gave us a sense of what it's like to just be, one of the few amongst the many. Okay, Angela Y. Davis, Women, Race, and Class. That took ages to come in on my library pile. Every once in a while a book comes across where I just think everybody should read this. This is an amazing book. It was written in the 70s. She's taken on a whole lot of research. Now, I think she doesn't pose herself as a researcher herself. She's taken a whole lot of other people's research and brought it together in this book that examines white privilege, black privilege, the emancipation of slavery, these women suffragettes, black women in the suffragette movement, working class women, both white and black, but there's even in that, there's a big strata difference. And she just points a Gatling gun at all kinds of people, and it says, yes, they did this, that was great, but whoa, look at this thing that they didn't do when they could have. And I think she's really got a very fair point to make, that way, way back when the slaves, the abolition of slavery movement in America was getting headway, which I'd like to point out was really different than the British experience. I think we can't underestimate that what happened in America with respect to emancipation was just a world of difference. We may have ended up at the same place, but the starting point was quite a bit different. So you really need to read the book to get a sense of that, because I can't explain it here. It's too much. But what I would like to point out is that the heroines of the women's suffragette movement, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cranton and Lucretia Mott, really made quite a bloomer in not including black women in the suffragette movement. All those ladies were involved in the liberation of slaves kind of programs and speaking and all that kind of business. And that was all great, but at a certain point they realized in order to really be powerful speakers and powerful instruments of change, they also needed their rights to be enhanced. So women weren't supposed to speak in public, for instance. Well, in some places that was actually outlawed, not just a societal norm that had to be obeyed. So there were a lot of women's rights issues that were being examined at the same time as the Civil War was building up. And the white women of the leadership group dropped the ball as far as black women were concerned. And in fact, in some ways, they didn't even really consider black women. They were more worried about black men getting the vote before they did. And that was just like not something they wanted to support at all. So consequently, what these leaders of the women's suffragette group missed out on was not just the state of slavery, but the state of political and economic powerlessness that black people would experience. I mean, nobody really, or few people, could see beyond the declaration of freedom for the blacks. Nobody really thought about what are these folks going to do? How are we going to get them out of a scenario that's just as bad? And if you read about Reconstruction and all that sort of thing, you realize that they just went from one kind of bondage into another. But that's a whole other story. So what this book examines basically is the precursors to the situation we're sitting in today, which, as I say, was 70s, which hasn't changed very much in 50 years. The one big thing that black families in particular were super keen on before they were keen on the vote or jobs was education for their children. But as we all know, education for their children in black communities like Mississippi and Arkansas and so forth were, marginal at best. And it was real heroes that went down and were teachers to those children. And when, even before we get to the desegregation of schools in the 60s, it was quite a challenge to educate these children. And then, where do they go with that education? Even in the, statistically, I think still in the late 70s, most women of color were domestic and paid pittances. It really wasn't much better than slavery. I think one of the comments she makes is that the white housewife was definitely instruments of suppression of black women's rights. And I'm only halfway through the book. The first chapter was pretty tough because she really, really drew out the condition of enslaved women. They had the additional torture of being raped as part of the punishment system for getting compliance. So that first chapter was pretty horrific to read. Certainly depressing. What's interesting about these three books is I didn't plan this. I knew Jacqueline Woodson had a new book out I wanted to read. Passing had been on my list or in my pile literally for about a year before I picked it up. And I think that I came across the Angela Davis book through, actually, I'm going to give credit to Jean at Bookish Thoughts because she is a very good feminist and helps to get people to the roots of feminism and so forth. And her background is in classical literature, and even back then she's talking about the role of women in society. Anyhow, I believe she recommended this book, and as I say, I think everyone should read this book. It really brings to home just how long and grinding the situation in the States has been, how it continues to basically flourish because it's in the interest of the power holders to maintain these systems. So we see strides, we see black actresses, we see occasionally women of color in positions of politics and doctors and so on, but they're minority by a lot. So what about all those other folks that are still sitting basically in tenements and slums and so on? The status really hasn't changed that much. And this book really helps us to understand the roots of that poverty. It doesn't blame the black person, and I think that is a significant shift in a lot of the literature. I think Angela Davis really, insisted that, hey, you can't blame these people for something that the white people created in terms of the mythology of rape and black men raping white women and so on. Yeah, so I didn't expect to have 3 books on these kinds of topics. It's usually when I pull my books for the summer, it's based on the Children's and Youth Awards for across North America, the best of. And then in the August, I usually have a whole bunch of mysteries and children's literature and all that kind of business. It's been a very serious month. I have some other books that are almost as serious, but I'm going to try and bring you a whole bunch of fun books the next time.